Dumon is one of the 7 Baryon Emperors in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, and in the absence of Nash, leads them while exuding the virtues of loyalty and honor. But despite this key role, he doesn't actually get much representation in the card game proper, though it seems that Duel Links is currently doing its best to put some respect on his name. Hello everyone, GoldenNova here, and today we'll be covering an archetype chosen by my patrons. While Dumon's Ace theme hasn't had a lot of time in the spotlight, while it got its chance, it was one of the most explosive Xyz engines you can ask for, as long as you had Xyz monsters that could handle them. So prepare your overlay units, cause we're about to outshine the competition with Star Seraphs Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons, as well as the wonderful people over at Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and save 5% on your order by using coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. So what's the deal with Star Seraphs? Well, they're a series of level 4 light attribute fairy type monsters, and as with most archetypes during the Xyz era, they focus on getting material onto the board as quickly as possible to perform your Xyz summons. But Star Seraphs come with a bit of a twist. A few of their monsters give you a little bonus when using them as material for Xyz monsters that require a minimum of 3 material. Now, the pool for this isn't very deep, but it comes with a suite of additional effects, from drawing you cards to destroying them, and incentivizes you to play some of the game's oft-overlooked Xyz monsters that just don't make the cut in traditional rank 4 toolbox strategies. Though, if you're okay with not getting all of the value out of these monsters, there is room for using some regular, reliable 2-material Xyz monsters as well. First up, let's talk about Star Seraph Sage. It has 1600 attack and 1400 defense, and once per turn you can send a spell card from your hand to the grave to special summon a Star Seraph monster from your hand. Not very promising. You have to go minus just to summon 1 monster from your hand. You couldn't be bothered to summon from the deck, huh? I mean, in its defense, this is during Xyz's early years. I imagine they didn't want to go too wild with getting out free material, even if that was the design stipulation that they put forth in the first place. But because that's the case, just run Summoner Monk. It's the same effect, but you get a level 4 monster out of the deck, and like we said earlier, all Star Seraphs are level 4. Speaking of 4, Monk is 4 years older than Sage, so it's not like they weren't already doing this kind of design. This monster may be modeled after a giant book, but it's certainly not on the same page as everyone else. Star Seraph Scale has 1500 attack and 900 defense, and when this card is special summoned, you can special summon a Star Seraph monster from your hand. Then you can place a light monster from your grave on the top of your deck. Also, an Xyz monster that was summoned using 3 or more monsters, including this card on the field as material, gains the following effect. Once per turn, while this card has Xyz material, if any number of monsters are special summoned from the hand, immediately draw a card. That's right, we've had a form of Molcharmy Perulia since Zexal. But no, seriously, this card is pretty nifty once you've got some setup going on. Whether you use Sage, Summoner Monk, or some other method of special summoning this, you get another summon from the hand to help with making your big Xyz monsters, and stacking a light monster from your grave on top of your deck, especially a Star Seraph one, is going to be very important in just a bit. And while the inherited effect isn't as strong as Perulia, it only triggers once per turn after all, it doesn't check to see from whose hand the monster is special summoned from. So you can get a draw both when you special summon from the hand, as well as when your opponent doesn't. So you still get to punish your opponent for summoning Poplars. And honestly, considering how much advantage those decks get, it's only fair we have something to balance out the scales. Star Seraph Scepter has 1800 attack and 400 defense, and when this card is normal or special summoned, you can add a Star Seraph monster from your deck to your hand, except a copy of this card. And an Xyz monster that was summoned using 3 or more monsters, including this card on the field as material, it gains the following effect. When it's Xyz summoned, you can target one other card on the field, destroy it, and if you do, you can draw a card. This is it, our Stratos, and much like Stratos, it's not once per turn. So the more of these you can summon out in a turn, the more Seraphs you can stuff your hand with. And then when you make a 3-mat Xyz, you get to pop and draw a card. Like, that's goofy, right? But wait, there's more. These stack. Use 2 scepters and you get 2 pops and 2 draws. This is one of the workhorses of the deck, keeping the gears moving and the advantage flowing. And the best part is, the Star Seraph symbol in there looks like a stoic little guy poking his head out to check on things. It's kind of endearing in a biblically accurate kind of way. Star Seraph Scout has 1200 attack and 1800 defense, and when normal summoned, you can special summon a Star Seraph monster from your hand. Whoa, wait, hold up, what? Sage needs an entire discard to make this work, and you're telling me Scout just does it for free on summon? I mean, arguably, Sage is repeatable, but if you're keeping your material monsters on board longer than a single phase, you are doing something wrong. The only issue with Scout is that it only triggers on normal summon, so it won't chain off of other special summon effects. But even if you do get this onto the board in a special way, thus bypassing its effect, it's still level 4 material. Though I admit, its effect has very little to do with actually scouting. Why don't you go off and, I don't know, check our opponent's top deck or find out what's in their hand? I like what you're doing, truly I do, but if we don't line up your job with what you actually do, then language has no point. You'd think an angel would care about stuff like this. Star Seraph Sovereignty has 800 attack and 2000 defense and cannot be used as Xyz material for an Xyz summon unless it uses 3 or more monsters. If you normal or special summon any number of Star Seraph monsters except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, draw a card. Then you can special summon it if it's a Star Seraph monster. Okay, so the material restriction on this one is a little less nice than the cards that give you bonuses if you use 3 or more material. But if you're on theme, this is a must play either way, because that effect is goofy. It's essentially a free extender that draws you a card to replace itself, and if it happens to be an on-theme monster, you get to summon it too. In fact, that's where Scale's effect comes in most handy. By placing Scepter on top of your deck, you can summon out another Star Seraph to trigger the Sovereignty. Then when you go for the draw, that's a Scepter on top of your deck, which you can summon and use its effect to search out another copy of Sovereignty. But this works best when you already have another Scepter in hand to go with it. In fact, that's the bread and butter combo the theme was known for. If you have Scepter and Sovereign in hand, you can normal summon the Scepter, triggering its search. Then once you get priority back from your opponent, you trigger the Sovereign in hand. You'll resolve the chain, summoning it and drawing off the Sovereign, maybe summoning a Star Seraph from it, then have Scepter add another Sovereign from your deck to your hand, which will then trigger since you summoned a Star Seraph during that last chain, giving you another draw and potential summon. This, by itself, puts every 3-mat rank 4 into contention for playability. It's just a shame that the only way we ever referred to this was as the stick chair combo. It had some, let's say, implications. Star Seraph Sword has 1400 attack and 1000 defense, and once per turn you can send a Star Seraph monster from your hand to the grave to boost this card's attack by the sent monster's original attack until the end phase. This is just another name, really. It doesn't contribute anything to what the deck is trying to accomplish. Maybe it turns some spare Seraphs in hand into offensive pressure, and to its credit, plenty have strong enough stat lines to push Sword up to the high 2Ks and even low 3Ks, but that's really not why you should be playing this. What you should be doing is wondering why this looks like if Speedroid Razorring had a life-changing experience and became a born-again Methodist. Alright, that does it for the main deck monsters. Now it's time for the Xyz monsters, starting with number 102, Star Seraph Sentry, a rank 4 monster with 2500 attack and 2000 defense, requiring 3 level 4 light monsters as material. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, then target a face-up monster your opponent controls and have its attack. Also, negate its effects, and those changes are permanent. Also, if this face-up card on the field would be destroyed, you can detach all of its Xyz material instead, and if you do, any battle damage you take this turn is halved. That's actually not half bad. You shrink a monster, strip away all of its effects, and has a 2500 attack body, which basically gets over anything that you can hit with its first effect. It also comes with some interesting protection. It's not good, but it is interesting. Combine this with the inherited effects you're likely to get from your Star Seraphs, and we're looking at a pretty neat monster. It's like fighting the final boss of the Fighting Polygon team. Number Chaos 102, Archfiend Seraph is a rank 5 monster with 2900 attack and 2400 defense, requiring 4 level 5 light monsters as material. But, as with most of the Chaos Xyz monsters, we're not really concerned with the printed material requirements. If this face-up card would be destroyed, you can detach 2 material from it instead. If the last material, or materials, are detached from this card, burn your opponent for 1500 damage. Also, if this card has number 102, Star Seraph Sentry, as Xyz material, it gains the following effect. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card, then target a face-up monster your opponent controls and change the target's attack to 0, and if you do, negate its effects. Now this is Well, it's expected, right? All the Barian Emperors have a boss monster that gets a Chaos upgrade, but the funny thing is that the mechanics of ranking up essentially run counter to how the Star Seraphs operate. Like, granted effects from Scepter and Scales only work when used as material for the summon. It's not like Zodiacs where the monster just gains an effect as long as that Zodiac is material. Nothing about Archfiend Seraph really reaches back to help out the core deck either, and the payoff is just a slightly better version of the original monster when it comes to the debuff effect, and the protection is arguably worse. True, potentially you could use it multiple times since it only gets rid of a certain number of materials, but if you rank up an empty sentry, it won't have enough material to protect itself. And if it does end up having 2 material, then you have to make a choice between using the debuff and holding on to it to use the protection. Honestly, I don't know why you'd bother running any rank up magic spells to go into this when Sentry does just about everything you'd want to do anyway in this deck. Unfortunately, the design for the card is peak. It's what you would get if you put Eternatus and Hatsune Miku in a blender. It's just too cool. Alright, so that's all of these Star Seraph cards, but what do we do with them? Well, what you see is what you get. We want level 4 monsters that are summoned easily to help us make rank 4s. The question is, are there any other Xyz monsters that we can plug in to work well with them? And are there any Light Fairy synergies that can help make our setup more consistent? Well, because the pilot of this deck is a Barian Emperor, it's worth taking a look at the 7th series of cards meant to support the numbers 101 to 107. And the best one by far is 7th Tachyon. True, the name implies that we're supposed to use it with Mizar, but it can reveal a sentry from our extra deck to put any Star Seraph into our hand, and it puts a card from our hand on top of our deck, which is perfect for setting a Scepter on there for a good Sovereign trigger resolution. 7th Eternity also gives you a way to negate the effects of a monster your opponent controls if its attack is lower than one of your over 100 number monsters, as well as a way to revive a number monster from our grave by purging all the material from a monster, which seems odd, but then again is a quick way to purge Archfiend Seraph of materials to get that 1500 burn damage. Barian Untopia is a field spell that gives your Chaos Xyz monsters effect destruction and targeting protection from your opponent. And if you rank up while this card is on the field, you just get to absorb an opponent's monster as material, meaning your Archfiend Seraph has more to work with while acting as removal. Oh, and while we're on the subject, I know I've said a number of disparaging things about our personal Chaos Evolution, but to be fair, it is basically the perfect card to rank up into Chaos Xyz Barian Hope. Sentry will have 3 materials, so if you rank up immediately into Archfiend Seraph for 4, a rank up into Barian Hope will leave it with a 5k attack stat. And from there, any number of monsters we throw into the grave is going to give our representation of the Barian Emperors even more power. In fact, because of our ability to spit out level 4 materials, and with Sovereign being the only monster that won't make a 2-mat, what are some other over 100 monsters that we can lean on? Silent Honor Arc is a big one as far as removal goes, and as long as we're playing rank up magic nonsense, we might as well play Silent Honor Dark as well. It absorbs a monster once per turn and can almost infinitely recur itself as long as it gets new material under it before it gets destroyed again. Ragna Zero has been a useful utility monster from time to time to deal with monster setups that deal with attack stat changes. Masquerade is also an Xyz monster that needs 3 materials, which means it's fully compatible with all of our monsters, giving us a battle phase monster negate, while its Umbral Horror upgrade has the devastating effect of negating an on-field monster effect, hand-ripping your opponent, and having their life points, something that Performage players are starting to discover they can do as well. Star Cestus similarly needs 3 material, and while its effect only works on battle and boxers, Comet Cestus is a bit more aggressive when it comes to closing out the game. Lastly, Giant Hand isn't anything to write home about, but Giant Red Hand is easier to enable and can be a board-wide effect negate, though ironically not against the effect that it chains to. Sadly, since Tachyon Dragon is a level 8 monster, we won't have an easy way to access it, but that may not be an issue for too long. But what rank up magic would work best here? The classic Barian's Force not only turns Sentry into Archfiend Seraph, it can also steal a material from an Xyz monster your opponent controls if they have any, and that's always objectively funny, especially if you're up against the Pearly player. Astral Force can take our Sentry and turn it into any rank 6 Light Fairy Xyz monster in the game, and by any, I mean the only one in existence, Beatrice! Everyone's favorite double foolish burial. And Numeron Force is a great way to shut off a lot of our opponent's interaction, at least the ones that are face up. I wish I could say that Rank Up Magic the 7th one would be awesome, but actually, in this context, it sucks. Even beyond having to meet its ridiculous activation requirements, because a lot of new Baryon cards have done a lot to bypass those conditions. But going straight into Archfiend Seraph means it only has one material, and we've already gone over how detrimental that is for the card itself, though once again, free 1500 damage. Now let's talk about some 3 material rank 4s that you might want to consider. Bujinki Amaterasu interacts with our banished monsters, which we don't do inherently, so it's not super useful at the moment, but does leave the door open for any combos that require us to banish our light monsters with off-theme cards, to say nothing of giving us some counterplay against Dimension Shifter. Chaos Exce's equipped Jin in general is, well, we don't get the bonus effect because we didn't make the base version first, but does turn a monster from defense position to attack on summon, but only on summon, so if that's something you need, it gives you a way to use Mimighouls more effectively at least. Evil Swarm Ouroboros is a fantastic option because on top of whatever inherited effect it gets from our Star Seraphs, you get 3 distinct pieces of interaction, all of which are very powerful. Full Armored Utopic Ray Lancer is a debuff to our opponent's entire board, is a skill drain to our opponent's attack position monsters during the battle phase, and is a multi-attacker. You can even get good usage out of Gaga Gigo the Risen, which clocks in at a respectable 2,950 attack, which is pretty staggering. Though you might be better off running Night Papilloperative, as its effect can get it to 3,200 by itself on first activation, and can get even bigger if you have more Xyz monsters with more material. Making Utopia Prime gives you an all-or-nothing board wipe, and the Mathmech Xyz monsters actually give you some pretty radical options, with Alan Bershin being a level 4 monster searcher, and Laplation able to rip out a ton of your opponent's cards. But probably the most impactful shell that the Seraphs found themselves in was Tellarknights, as they also had a tendency to make Xyz monsters with more than 2 material. Now, we can't make Trivor as its materials are locked to its own theme, but Delteros is fair game. It keeps all of your on-summon effects safe while providing a bit more removal as well. And if you find that a rank 5 Xyz monster would help out your deck better, you can now access many of them with Tellarknight Ptolemaeus, which is currently unbanned. It's like playing Performapal Pendulum all over again, assembling 3 level 4 monsters to make Ptolemaeus, rank up into Cyber Dragon Nova just to make Infinity. Just remember though that number monsters are not allowed for this effect, which is probably there only for balancing reasons, but I choose to believe that this means there is a hard line between Dual Terminal and a Zexal Cannon, a thing that basically no one else really cares about. But there's a new archetype that we might see them working with coming out in the next deck build pack crossover breakers, Razol. It's another light-ish attribute rank 4 deck, and while we don't have Xyz that require a minimum of 3 material, Duo Drive can be made with 2 or more, making it a great sync for our Seraphs. The search effect on it isn't bad either, especially since we can grab the field spell with it, which not only represents a draw if we have enough on-theme monsters in grave, it's also a monster effect negation that doesn't even activate, so hey, have fun with that. What about support that helps our main deck achieve its goals better? Well, the first thing I can think of is more level 4 monsters we can summon for free that help us bridge the gap in case we can't pull off a full stick chair combo. Photon Thrasher used to be the premier option in this scenario, but it has since been usurped by Sakitama. It's basically a normal summon that doesn't use your normal summon, it's light attribute, and it's a fairy. It might as well be an honorary Star Seraph monster. Also, shoutouts to Astral Karibo. It has an amazing effect as an extender that also grants destruction immunity from battle and your opponent's effects. As far as fairy support goes, once you dump enough into the graveyard, we've got Archlord Christia to shut off any further special summons until your opponent finds an answer. Alternatively, Barrier Statue of the Heavens is easier to field and leaves the door open for your light monsters to be played. But on top of light being one of the most popular types in the game, there's a big issue with getting run over in battle. But if you feel like committing to the bit, there's another light fairy that can help win basically any battle and is applicable to any of our Star Seraphs just in case. Our good friend, Honest. As for a silly tech pick, well, Burying Hope's effect to copy a number monster in Graveyard is pretty cool, but is generally limited to monsters we can make so we can get them out of our extra deck. But Dogmatica Maximus does not care about such things. Summon everyone's favorite religious fanatic, take any 2 numbers out of your extra deck and put them into the grave, giving you ample opportunity to use any of their effects. Now you can access all of those pesky Tachyon and Galaxy-Eyes number monsters you otherwise couldn't make. Or bin Big Eye to steal a monster, attack directly with Lancelot, or gain a huge stat buff with Ravenous Tarantula. With this effect, the world is your oyster. And that's all I have to say about Star Seraphs. With their latest foray into Duel Links, we may be seeing a wave of support in the near future, in line with how we've been getting support for a number of Burying Emperors in recent years. And if so, Dumont could be a herald of a new age of the rank 4 strategy. And honestly, I'm all here for it. While the generic Link 2 is the spiritual successor to its legacy, there was something about the rank 4 toolbox that I feel was lost in the transition to Vrains. But even if it all ends up as just being another flash in the pan, I can still see that it put in a lot of effort to get here, which means it gets the Gold Star Seraph from me. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are Star Seraphs more than just your common rank and file fairies, or do we need to cast them back into the Burying Sea? And which one's your favorite? I'm pretty partial to Sovereignty. It doesn't look like a comfy chair, but it does look like a cool chair. Let me know your favorite down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode is brought to you by Dragon Shield. Get the sleeves as strong as dragon scales and get 5% off your order by using the coupon code GoldenNova at checkout. It was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, Upstairs Media, and the Wizard Moose, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, 50 Gigabits, Ada Basilisk, Adams Ajdel, Oexo Toahime, Anansi Dragon, Ancient Wizard, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Eric, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Leo 458, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Mern, Muse Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Pat Poos, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Serenity Towns, The Critic of Innocence and Thievery Coast, Cosmic Crusaders Andrew J. Whitaker, Ariel Kersey, Bedin von Titty Sprinkles, Beelzephyr, Beluga Masta, Blitzwolf, Chaz Ghost, Dr. Reaper R.I.P., Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lobamaru 02, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, McSpoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Nyx, Obsidian, Shizuka Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, The Phantom Knights of Shitted Pants, The Pokemon 52, Tiger X2476, Weasel King of Weaseltown, and Zaldreka, as well as the wonderful Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see another video about some sweet rank 4s, check out this gigantic video I made on the king of the Xyz summon himself, Yuma Explained. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.